and welcome to the Friday episode of Stop Chasing Skinny. Just a bite-sized bit of information. And welcome to Friday. Friday usually means some relaxing time. Could be one of the most difficult times as far as sticking to the nutrition that you are trying to stick to. So Friday can be tough for a lot of different reasons, but one of the main reasons is because we've been using our willpower throughout the week, and now we're at Friday and our willpower is pretty exhausted. So when you add that pretty exhausted willpower to opportunities like getting together with friends and family and other occasions, it's kind of a recipe for not success. I won't call it disaster. It could be disaster, but there are some ways to kind of combat this. Like as soon as you understand what is happening, you can kind of set yourself up so that you don't fall into a lot of those typical pitfalls. So a few of the different things that I choose to do is I make sure that if I am going to get together with people on Friday after a busy or tough week, I'll make sure that I've had something super nutritious before I get together with people. Sometimes that's a little more difficult, especially if you're going to meet up for like happy hour or something like that. But in that case, then I will make sure that I actually had a lunch, that I'm not starving by the time I meet up with everybody, and that helps a ton. Something else that helps is that if I have already predetermined I'm either going to just enjoy myself and eat whatever, or I am going to stick with whatever plan I have, just make sure that you end up following through on that, because you end up having to learn how to trust yourself to be in those situations. So if you're just going to enjoy it, then just enjoy it. That's the best way. There's very little guilt involved, like that food guilt is pretty tough. But if you've just planned on eating it, then you just eat it. And there's no, oh man, I failed on this, or any of those emotional things we tie to it, versus if you plan to stick with something and then you end up totally eating stuff that you didn't want to eat. But that just takes a little bit of planning. But if you've planned in your cheats, treats, whatever you want to call it, then there's a lot less guilt associated with that. And so if you really are not going to partake, my suggestion is to just walk away from it. Just don't even pay any attention to it. When people ask you things like, oh, aren't you going to eat this? Why aren't you eating that? I change the subject and literally just walk away. One of the worst things that you can do is stand around the food table or whatever, where the food is out, and tell people how you shouldn't eat it, how you don't want to eat it, even how you're not going to eat it, because then you're bringing all of this attention and focus to this food and this activity. And very few people who are standing around having this discussion with you are going to tell you, yeah, you don't want that, and help you walk away. Usually, they're going to tell you, oh, live a little, enjoy yourself, don't feel bad, it's just one. The list goes on and on and on. And there's a variety of reasons for why they will, have you eat it or tell you to eat it, encourage you to eat it. It could be because they're eating it and they want company. It could be because they think that you are looking for permission to eat it. It's crazy how many things go into this. But really, if you just walk away from it, it's so much simpler. Same thing goes for any of your holiday times. Because we're coming up on holidays here. If you just walk away from it, you just remove yourself from it and don't pay any attention to it, don't make a big deal about it, don't have a discussion about it, it's so much easier. Try it. Please let me know how that works for you. It's been my secret weapon for years now. So one final thing for this Friday is I want to talk a little bit more about the whole emotional connection to food and how it's so deep and why it's so deep. I mean, I'm not going to go into all of that, but there are a couple books that I want to recommend. One that I have been recommending to clients for years now, it's called Women, Food, and God, and it explains even if you are not a religious person, it explains why we have this tie to food, to emotion, and it's so deep. And then the other one that I just started recently is called Diet Cults, and it's really really interesting too. It talks about how so many of us we hold on to these different diets and these diet cults for reasons way beyond the food. And I think once you start reading this and start to understand, why we have so many diets that are on the market these days, why every person who has a new diet is proclaiming that it's the best diet, it's the only diet, it's the perfect way to eat. There is no perfect way to eat. It's really up to you. That's one of the reasons why when I am coaching clients, I just have a meal guide and we just kind of work through that. There is no one specific way that works. And the book goes into details of why, but basically, we're humans, and one thing that makes us so different from every other animal on the planet is that we have the ability to adapt to different foods and survive in that way. So the other, from a psychological standpoint, I thought the Diet Cults book was really interesting because they talked about how so many people fall into these different dieting cults because we are seeking an identity. And so being within this certain way of eating gives us this identity. And there's this whole other thing with superiority because supposedly our way of eating is the best way of eating. So when you look at it from that perspective, there's no wonder why marketing continues to sell us different diets, to tell us different things are the best things. I haven't really prescribed to any specific diet for a very long time. Dieting was never my thing, my forte so much. I was a vegetarian for about 10 years. That didn't do it for me at all. I was puffy. I carried extra weight. It was really hard for me to keep the extra weight off. It just didn't work for me. But I will say that I totally fell in for all those other reasons. I totally loved being a vegetarian because I could tell people I was a vegetarian, and I didn't hurt animals, so that made me feel really good about myself. There's just so many different things that go into that. So I just think that in this whole fitness journey, understanding why we do what we do, why we like certain diets, why we seek certain diets, why we even feel like we must have a specific thing to follow. It opens your mind to the different possibilities. And ultimately, back to the tagline, life begins when you stop chasing skinny. It's great to be able to eat with the idea of nourishing your body, not with the idea of, well, this specific diet requires these specific rules. That's what it's all about, right? Like I said, I was a vegetarian for a decade. I prescribed to a lot of very stringent things in my life, and it's only been since I let a lot of those things go and looked at it from a higher level versus the macronutrient piece of things. Kind of a joke. That I found some freedom in the food and peace. I don't obsess over the food. I don't obsess about the exercise. It's a normal part of life. And, honestly, even back when I was doing fitness competitions and I was super ripped and I was super lean and I was everything that I had tried to be because I could follow the plan very well, what was missing there was I wanted some balance in my life. I wanted to be able to trust myself. I didn't want to have to live so strictly. I didn't want to have to measure and weigh my food. And think about how many hours a day we are spending thinking about food, exercise, body image, body fat, all these different things that we could really use to think about other things in life. So I know way easier said than done. That's why I continue to put these podcasts together so that I can share kind of what I went through and how I found my way with you. But I will say that there is no specific plan. It's constantly work. I can give great workout plans. I can give a nutritional guide and help with guiding on the nutrition side of things. But ultimately, the trick really is I have read so many books, listened to them on audio more so than anything else. That really hard commute of 2.5 hours every day in the car turned out to be like the best learning opportunity for me ever. I hated it at the time, but I made the best use of it. So that's what my advice is. If there's any one fitness professional that says I can just tell you, X, Y, and Z, they're over promising probably. My program does, I do include a lot of these lessons every single week in the 12-week program to talk about, how you can kind of free yourself from the food, how you can automate a lot of things so that you don't have to think about it all the time, how you can get the most bang for your buck and in the nutrition department. It's all these things put together, but so back to the books. I will put the links to the books in the show notes too. So if you need those links, again, it's Women, Food, and God and Diet Cults are the two that I'm recommending this week. All right. I hope you have a great one. Talk to you next week.